There are days when someone says something sharp and you feel it land somewhere deep inside you, and even though you nod or smile or walk away, that feeling stays with you for hours, maybe longer, and you carry it around like something heavy you didn't ask to hold. David worked at a library in a small town where the winters were long and the summers smelled like cut grass and old books. He was 42 years old, unmarried, living in a narrow apartment above a bakery that filled his mornings with the scent of rising dough. He liked his life, or at least he thought he did, but there was something he couldn't seem to put down. It started small, the way these things always do. A patron would complain about a late fee, their voice rising just enough to make the air feel tight, and David would smile politely and waive the charge, but inside, something clenched. He would replay the conversation on his drive home, imagining what he should have said, how he could have explained the policy better, how he might have made them understand. The words would loop in his mind while he made dinner, while he sat on his couch, while he tried to read before bed. He told himself it didn't matter, that people were just stressed, that he shouldn't take it personally, but the feeling remained, a kind of weight that settled in his chest and refused to leave. Over time, he began to notice a pattern. It wasn't just the complaints. It was the offhand comment from his co-worker about how he organized the shelves, the way his sister sighed when he arrived late to Sunday dinner, the stranger who cut him off in traffic and didn't wave an apology. Each small moment felt like a stone being added to a bag he carried everywhere, and the bag grew heavier, and he grew more tired, and he didn't know how to set it down. He started avoiding people when he could. He took his lunch breaks alone in the back room. He stopped answering his sister's calls as often. He drove the long way home to avoid certain intersections. But the weight didn't go away, because the problem wasn't the people, not really. It was the way he held on to what they did, the way he replayed it, reshaped it, let it build a home inside him. One Saturday in early autumn, David drove out to a state park an hour from town, not because he loved hiking, but because he needed to be. Somewhere that wasn't his apartment or the library or anywhere people knew him. The trail was empty, just golden leaves and cool air and the soft crunch of gravel under his shoes. He walked without thinking, letting his mind wander, and eventually he sat down on a bench near a small pond where the water was so still it looked like glass. He watched the surface for a long time, and then, without meaning to, he picked up a small stone from the ground beside him and tossed it into the water. The ripple spread outward, wide and slow, and then, after a minute or so, the water went still again. He picked up another stone and threw it, and the same thing happened. Ripples, and then stillness. He sat there for nearly an hour, throwing stones and watching the water return to calm, and something about it made him feel strange, like he was seeing something he'd known all along but had forgotten. The water didn't hold on to the stones. It accepted the disruption, it moved with it, and then it let it go. David didn't have a great revelation sitting on that bench, no sudden clarity or voice from the universe telling him what to do. But he felt something shift, just slightly, like a door opening in a room he'd kept locked for a long time. He drove home that evening and made himself tea and sat by the window. And for the first time in weeks, he didn't replay anything in his mind. He just sat. The next Monday, a man came into the library angry about a book that had been damaged, insisting it wasn't his fault, that the pages were already torn when he checked it out. David listened, apologized, explained the policy, and the man left, still angry, muttering under his breath. David felt the familiar tightness begin in his chest, the old reflex to hold on to it, to turn it over and over until it became something bigger than it was. But this time, he paused. He stood there at the desk, hands resting on the wooden surface, and he thought about the pond, about the way the water had let the stones sink and then returned to stillness. He took a breath, slow and deliberate, and he imagined the man's anger as something separate from himself. Something that had passed through the air and was already gone, already sinking to the bottom where it couldn't touch him anymore. It didn't disappear completely, the feeling, but it was lighter, and it faded faster than it usually did. He tried it again the next day, and the day after that, when his co-worker made a joke that felt like criticism, when his sister asked why he never called, when the car behind him honked the second the light turned green. He practiced letting it move through him instead of clutching it close. Some days it worked better than others. Some days the weight still built up, and he carried it home and set it down on his couch and felt its presence in the room. But slowly, over weeks and then months, he learned to recognize the difference between what was happening and what he was doing with what was happening. He couldn't control what people said or did. He couldn't make them kinder, or more patient, or more understanding. But he could choose, at least sometimes, not to carry their words like stones in a bag that was his to hold. He started noticing other things too. The way a difficult conversation didn't have to ruin his whole afternoon. The way he could be annoyed or hurt without letting it become the only thing he felt. The way some days he forgot to replay anything at all, and the quiet in his mind felt like a gift he'd given himself. One evening in winter, his sister called and asked if he wanted to come over for dinner, and he said yes without hesitation, without the old resentment he used to feel when she asked. They ate together and talked about small things, and when she mentioned that he seemed different lately, lighter somehow, he just smiled and said he'd been trying to let go of things that didn't belong to him. She didn't ask what he meant, and he didn't explain, and that felt right too. David still worked at the library, still lived above the bakery, still drove the same roads and saw the same people. His life hadn't changed in any dramatic way, but something inside him had shifted, something quiet and essential, and he carried less now than he used to. He carried only what was his, and on days when the weight started to build again, when someone's words felt sharp or heavy or impossible to ignore, he would close his eyes for a moment and think of the pond, of the ripples spreading and fading, of the water returning to stillness, and he would breathe, and he would let it go. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough, because that was the thing he'd learned, slowly and without fanfare, sitting on a bench by still water and throwing stones that sank without a trace. You can't stop the stones from being thrown, but you can choose not to hold them once they've fallen, and in that choice, small and quiet and repeated day after day, there is a kind of freedom that feels like coming home to yourself. If this story resonated with you, if it made you feel a little lighter, or helped you see something in a new way, consider subscribing to this channel. We share quiet stories like this one every week, stories about ordinary people finding small truths that change how they live. Thank you for listening. And until next time, be gentle with yourself.